which is a state workers union that just imposed a rotten contract on us, along with change to lose SEIU 1000, which got everybody out to work for Jerry Brown, and is now pushing for the regressive tax proposals that they're trying to make the working class pay for the crisis in California. Because my union isn't turning out at work, what do? We join the United Public Workers for Action, and we organize the Inter-Union Organizing Committee at the Department of Public Health. Because the unions don't show up to organize the membership, we have to organize the membership ourselves. What we advocate for is we fight to have class struggle caucuses inside of our unions. The only reason that the ILWU was able to take the exemplary action of showing how to fight against the corporate onslaught is because they had a class struggle caucus in their union for 10, 15 years, and they were able to shut down the ports against apartheid, shut down the ports for Mumia Abu-Jamal, shut down the ports for Oscar Grant, the most important thing that they've done. Just recently shut down the port for the defense of Palestine, and then thank you again from the public workers for shutting down the port for the public workers. Also, revolutionary socialism, we see the revolutionary upsurge as part of a response to the crisis of capitalism. It is in a death agony. They're going to call this a second dip of a recession. It is an insurmountable crisis they are not able to resolve. The bonds are falling apart across Europe. They can't resolve Greece. They can't resolve Portugal. They can't resolve Spain. They can't resolve Ireland. Germany's trying to bail out of the EU, etc. And people think that's not going to come here. That is coming here, because U.S. imperialism has the job of maintaining control of their oil for our corporations all over the world, and they do it with 10 seconds. I see it. They do it. Five minutes? Come on, make up your mind. They do it in the interest of Wall Street. And our unions, 1 second, our union leadership is telling us we can't talk about foreign policy. AFL-CIO policy is not to talk about foreign policy. Why? They want you to go out and organize for Obama. We need our own workers' party. We need a workers' government. We need to overthrow the Democrats, Republicans,
over 40-year member of the American Postal Workers Union. I've been a delegate to National Convention 6 times. And incidentally, my brother up there, the one that said an injury to one is an injury to all. Too many union members don't realize that an injury to one is an injury to all applies not just to union people, but every American worker here. And we need to get that out. And myself, as a member of the American Postal Workers Union, I've been discriminated against by people in my own union and labor council. And it's time for that to stop and start working together. And I would also, when I was just baptized Catholic a couple of years ago, I like that my brother here, the one talking on Egypt, about what's being done to protect the rights of minorities, including Christian minorities, and women in Egypt and all throughout the Middle East, because that's a very serious issue to me. And the young lady here from Wisconsin, maybe you'd like to speak on this a little bit. I'd like to find out, because I believe that unions and small businesses need to work together like never before. Too many union people tell me, well, we can't work because they don't like us, they don't trust us, we don't trust them. Well, they're not going to trust you if you don't, get some debate going. And I believe small businessmen are hurting real bad in the country, as well as union people. And we need to, work together on it. And I believe that this is why I asked the young lady here from Wisconsin, how well were small businesses and unions working together in Wisconsin to overthrow this criminal in the governor's mansion? Because I think if small business worked big time with the unions in Wisconsin, we might have had what we wanted. A shutdown in Wisconsin and wherever else we need to do it. So I appreciate you talking about that and about how who was interfering with the unions in Wisconsin besides the government people. In other words, union people who were working on behalf of the union and union people who were working against the interests of union people. Thank you.
It's a good point about small businesses. There actually were a ton of small business organizations sprung up that were against Walker and against the attacks. There was this alternative to the Realtors Association. There were multiple actually alternative Realtors Associations, small business associations that came together to fight them, because they're not being represented in this stuff. And so it is true, there's actually real alliances that can be made with small business because they're not getting the benefits of any of these corporate tax breaks. They're not going to profit off any of these decisions that are being made. These are for huge corporations. So small businesses are getting stuck in the middle and really getting squeezed. And also, you know, a lot of these small business owners, their, you know, partners are teachers, their kids are going to the, you know, University of Wisconsin. I mean, everybody, when I talk about solidarity being a real thing, it was because everyone understood how these fights were connected. You know, that this was not only affecting them personally, but it was affecting all the people that they loved, you know. And so when we talk about, you know, the boss organizing the workers and organizing, you know, if the boss does some really nasty stuff and the organizers get, or the workers get really pissed off and they're like, well, I wasn't for the union, but now I am, right? You know, this was kind of one of those things where he went after everyone, so everyone had an invested interest to fight this. And so there's some real organizations that have actually sprung up to fight Walker and be an alternative to the Business Association. We actually did actions with them, and one of the things that they did is they did a poster that said, "You'll never eat lunch in this town again," and it had pictures of all the Republican leadership, and they posted them up on their windows. Businesses had signs all over their windows, so you know, in thinking about kind of how people build coalitions and move forward, it's absolutely somewhere that we should be looking, and there's a lot of anger there because they're, you know, they're hurting in this economy too.
Hi, my name is Brenda. I'm from 1021. So Pilar, when you were talking, it was almost like listening to my self-talk, because I've been saying these same words, and it's glad to hear that I'm not out there all alone and struggling. One of the things, and I'm in healthcare too, so one of the things that you said that really rang true is that the fear that's among unions, the fear to fight. The membership, when I go to my job at San Francisco General Hospital, they all want to fight. But when I come to union meetings, it's a totally different environment, the totally different thoughts, totally different direction. So I'm trying to bring the membership up and get them activated so that they start making it clear to my union what they want. And what they do want is they want to fight. They don't want to cave in. They don't want to make concessions, but they feel like it's being forced upon us. And also, I like to add that another thing that needs to be reformed is the labor councils. The labor councils are not always the members' friends. They're always the union leadership's friends, but they're not always the membership's friend. So I'm not sure what to do. If you have any ideas or tell me any experiences you had on how we go about doing that, I would certainly appreciate it from anybody.
That's happening in Wisconsin right now, and really what happened in Wisconsin has to happen everywhere. I mean, that's the answer, right? Everyone needs to start standing up and fighting, and if it's not the union leadership that's leading it, like the sister said, if the members are there and ready, I mean, people just, you know, people just started creating stuff, right? They just created emergency committees because this was a state of emergency, right? They just decided to start, you know, pulling together their coworkers and working on this stuff and fighting back and organizing themselves, right? And so where things don't exist, you know, I think a lesson that we learned is that it's not necessarily going to be led, and so workers can decide to just lead it themselves, you know, and step up as rank and file. And that's, you know, that's what's happening right now in Wisconsin, that they're bringing stewards committees together, like the public sector workers have a stewards committee that crosses all of the unions, so it's, you know, AFT and AFSCME and a bunch of different unions that are represented in those buildings with thousands of public workers. All the stewards come together and meet on a weekly basis. So there's real examples of people just taking power for themselves, and they've been planning actions. They just did an action yesterday. It was the civil service birthday party. You know, so there's all these things that you guys can do to start really showing the leadership what people want, and that they don't want to take concessions, that they want to fight back, and that people have been hurt enough. Everybody has sacrificed enough in this economy, And the corporations are bankrolling this stuff and have money lining their pockets, you know, so they get this. And you know, and the more that they see that people are organizing and willing to fight back, it pushes, you know, the leadership to follow.
I think in Egypt, one way that was, as you've seen in the slides, people are very, very creative. When you get people together, they come with ways that it's not even imaginable. But the fact is that the traditional union leaders were exposed as much as the politicians. They were like saying, these people, and they have we've seen pictures, and you can see it in the internet as well, who with workers being harmed by their work, and there was no workers' compensation for them. They say, and a picture of a union leader and tell them, what have you done to Abdullah, who has lost their eye and stuff like that. So expose the leadership as much as they are, and they're also asking for time limits for union leaders, just like anybody else, and ask them to be accountable. That's what examples I can say. In terms of the local 10, and I think what's happening, all the actions, all the solidarity with local 10 is way, way, way below what the local 10 members deserve. We really need to give them a lot of support. Solidarity is two-way street, it's not one way. And when I see that 2 days ago, we just delivered a solidarity message from unions who are under siege in Gaza, in solidarity with members of Local 10. We expect everybody else to do the same. And I don't think there will be any problem having brothers and sisters in Egypt delivering the solidarity for Local 10 brothers.
Resolution about a month ago, just FYI. Thank you.
I know there's a lot of people still wanted to talk. We're going to have a longer afternoon session that's going to be for more discussion. And so, you know, bring your questions to them. And I just kind of want to set up a little bit of why we started with Wisconsin and Egypt and leading into the afternoon session, and pose some questions for you guys to think throughout the day, so when you come in the afternoon, we can have a productive discussion. And I think we need to, the idea is that we want to see the connections between what's happening globally and what can happen locally, right? And I think we need to understand that what's happening in Wisconsin and what's happening in California, what's happening in Ohio, it has happened before in other places. This is a continuation of an agenda that's been going on for quite some time. If you like have understanding a little bit of current history, you know, like you remember that the neoliberal agenda of privatizing services, busting unions, all that stuff, it started with Pinochet. It started with the neoliberal agenda, and Pinochet was the first guy to try it out. And when he worked there for the capitalists, they're like, let's go wild with this. And now it's coming, you know, and they started through the third world. Like I remember in the 90s in Brazil, privatization was a big issue. They were privatizing every single public sector company there was. Whether they were profitable or not, there was like one, the oil company was the only one that was saved out of the privatization craze. You know, like, so, and it's not a new trend. It's just something that now is getting to the US, and now is coming, you know, like, and when Monadel said about solidarity being a two-way street, is something that we need to understand, that, you know, like, for a long time, workers in the third world have been asking for solidarity. For a long, long time, workers in the third world have been asking for solidarity from workers in the United States. And for a long, long time, they haven't been answered. For a long, long time, they haven't been answered. And now is our turn. And I mean, like, what happened, happened, right? And we're not bitter about it. But we need to change our mentality around what's going on in the world, how it affects us, and how, you know, like, it will come back to workers in the United States also, right? And then we need to also understand that Egypt and Wisconsin are very different situations than California, and trying to understand what are the specific situations, like why hasn't Wisconsin happened in California? With our budget as it is, you know, like, okay, we have a Democrat end, but our budget is not as terrible as Wisconsin, but it's pretty bad. And I know the teachers are putting some struggle, like, you know, like there's a lot of public sector workers are putting a fight with why is it not Wisconsin? And I think we need to be realistic and optimistic, right? We need to understand what is preventing us from reaching that level of struggle, and then prepare ourselves to build for that level of struggle. Right? And I think, so that's what we want to talk about in this afternoon, is going to be more focused on local struggles, and then throughout the day, if you can think about like, what is it that is happening in California that is not letting us reach that level of struggle, right? The realistic conditions that prevent us from reaching that level of struggle, and then what is it that we can do as organizers and activists to change that so we can reach the level of struggle we need to be able to get the things that we want. So those are the questions, right? Just think about what is it and what we can do. So we're going to start with the workshops pretty soon. I just have a few more announcements and then we can start today. We'll continue today. Lunch will be provided, so you don't need to go off campus to find lunch. There's going to be Vietnamese sandwiches at the student center. There's going to be signs all around so people can get around. Also, remember the interest meetings, they are up there. If you have, any, you can, look at the ones that, if you're interested, you can, look for what the room is. If you have a new one, you can just write it up and we'll find you a room. So, and they're going to happen from 1 to 2. So you're going to grab your lunch and then go to the meetings. And also, after 6, from 6 to 8, we are having a social at Oasis Club in downtown Oakland. It's not that far away, it's a few blocks away. Everybody's invited, so people can hang out and talk more and continue this conversation. Also, just directions for the workshops. The workshops are all in one part of the campus. When you go out, you go right, then you turn left, and then there's going to be signs telling you where to go. Okay? So, just one more clap for our speakers, and let's go.